one of those dots that needs to be connected will happen on Wednesday, the first day of the early signing period. What's going to happen with Michael Fasusi? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. If you hadn't hit that subscribe button, please do it. We are really closing in fast on 10,000 subscribers. Hope to do it by the end of the year. So help us out. Hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend. So, Jay, the early signing period starts on Wednesday, and Michael Fasusi said on social media that he is planning to sign at 2 p.m. at Louisville High School. Shout out to the Fighting Farmers of Louisville. So what's your feeling on what's going to happen with Michael Fasusi? Because we know Texas A&M have made some last-minute pushes over the last month.
Basically, when it comes to Fasusi, Texas and Texas A&M would be idiots if they didn't try to keep going after him. Because you got to remember, Oklahoma, we've had a bad season. We're 6-6. It's a bad season for us. You know, this is the second one in 3 years with Brent Venables' era. Everybody's, contemplating if he's going to get fired. The offensive line struggled, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, those schools with a lot of money is going to throw it at one of the top players in the class. The one player that a lot of people consider as the surefire, can't miss, dude's going to be an elite offensive lineman guy. And so they were smart to go after him. But he said time and time again, Bill Beatonbow's his dude. And so even though with the uncertainty with the firing of Seth Luttrell and the questions about what the staff's going to look like, he basically has said, Bill Beatonbow's there, I'm there. And so it hasn't really changed. Now, all the reports have come in over and over that, Texas A&M's making a push. Texas feels like they got a chance to flip. But all of these experts, every single one that I've seen screenshot and placed on social media, the one thing they all said, I'm still confident Oklahoma's going to get the signature. We're still waiting and monitoring the Bill Beatonbow situation. So, to me, John, if Michael Fasusi has already told you all that Bill Beatonbow's his guy, and we know that Brent Venables is not going to get rid of a dude that's bringing in not one, but two top 10 offensive tackles in this class and building up an interior line that the young guys we got now, nasty, with an additional Darius Avalafa up there at Utah who's coming through, and then Owen Hollenbeck who's going to be probably your next center and could potentially be your next Creed Humphreys. Not saying he is Creed, but hey, he's a wrestler. And wrestlers don't be losing battles in the trenches, especially when you're a state champion wrestler like he is down there in Texas out of Melissa. So if we're bringing that in and we're now building the line that Bill Beatonbow has wanted for the last few years. I mean, his last Joe Moore award-winning offensive line was the one that he had when Bob Stoops was head coach. Right? And they were recruiting the players based upon Bob Stoops' image. Then when Lincoln Riley came in, you start to see some adjustments of types of players they wanted to fit his system. And now that Brent Venables is here, we're seeing another change, John. So to me, the questions around Fasusi shouldn't be there. Now, there is questions around Cortez Mills, the wide receiver. That's probably the one I'm kind of wondering about.
Yeah, so back on Fasusi, Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons over at On3, they wrote a piece and they projected where each of the top, prospects might land and their confidence level. For Fasusi, they said, we still believe it's Oklahoma, but their confidence is low. And that's probably just kind of hedging a little bit because you never know what's going to happen with Texas and Texas A&M in play. Anything could happen. But I still feel pretty comfortable with it. As long as Bill Beatonbow's in the house, I still feel pretty comfortable because the relationship matters. And the developmental track record of Bill Beatonbow matters. On Cortez Mills, that one's fascinating because there were flip predictions from Steve Wiltfong over the weekend predicting that Mills would flip to Nebraska. But what's changed on that one? Because it looked like maybe he was out the door, but not so fast, my friend.
Yeah, I was on the social medias and popped on Instagram. I think I was about to put a video on there or something. And I followed Cortez a while ago and I saw his story, clicked on it, and it was like 30 minutes ago, like 36 minutes or something like that. It's in the screenshot. And I looked at it and it was a picture of him with the OU DNA strain behind him in his gear. So for context, for the uninitiated, all this week you've been seeing players post that they're locked in. The ones that we know are going to be in the class. They're just posting they're locked in, posting a picture in their gear, saying when their commitment is, and all of that. So you've been seeing a lot of that. Then you saw Y Cover 3 do the same thing, Cortez Mills, and it was like, oh, word, this is what we're doing? You're good? And right after I posted that on X, Emmett Jones retweeted it or reposted it. So I'm like, hey, obviously Emmett Jones must know something. It feels like that he's pretty confident that they've won his services back. Heck, Nebraska just fired their wide receiver coach. So, I mean, I know that there's supposedly something going on. Look, I'm just getting the whiteboard and I'm looking at all of this here.
Connecting all the strings.
I'm connecting these strings. Nobody knows what's going on. While at the same time, it feels like people do know. So I don't believe that Cortez Mills is going to Nebraska. I think that I am in the 60% to 65% confidence that he's going to end up signing with Oklahoma. And then we're going to be overly excited about how this room grows, because I think that we're also going to be very active in the portal just to make sure that we've got dudes that are healthy.
Yeah, and ready to go.
Yep.
It's fascinating. You know, after the predictions from Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons, I would have kind of expected either to hear nothing from Cortez Mills or a confirmation that, yeah, hey, I'm heading to Nebraska. But the fact that what you heard, or I heard, quote unquote, what you saw was him with the OU DNA emblem, you know, a few days after that. To me, that's the intriguing aspect of this, is like, okay, either say nothing or say you're going to Nebraska to confirm what Wiltfong and them at On3 are saying. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. And probably by this point, you've had a conversation with Emmett Jones and Brent Venables and Ben Arbuckle, and there's a pretty clear indication that they still want you to be a part of this class. So
exactly,
that's kind of where I'm at with the connecting the strings and conspiracy theories. With anybody else in the class that you're concerned about at this point? I mean, you never know what's going to happen over the next. We know because Peyton Bowen, the whole situation there, the flip to Oregon, flip to Oklahoma during the early signing period. There's anything can happen. But is there anybody else that you're looking at and you're like, man, I'm concerned about this dude maybe flipping? Because for me, I'm not. There's not really anybody out there that I'm like actively concerned about.
You know, first off, 5 stars are going to 5-star. Just keep that in mind. When you think with a 5-star player, 5 stars are going to 5-star. That's just the game's the game. And you decide to sign up for it, this is what you get to deal with. But, John, to your question of any players that I'm concerned about, I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't have any concerns. Like, we had the 2 decommits at wide receiver, in which, honestly, I felt like that was more of a numbers game, because that may be an indication that players have decided that they want to come back, and they've met with Ben Arbuckle as of, probably yesterday and today. So they're getting to know their OC. We'll probably find out guys making a decision as far as portal goes within the next 24 hours. But since that was the case, I'm like, I don't really think that I don't have anybody on either side of the ball that I'm even remotely concerned about. This was the best part about hiring Brent Venables, not dealing with a whole bunch of flip-flopping. Right, you're gonna have a player or two that's gonna flip. I'd say every class guarantee about 3 to 5. Just that's just the nature of recruiting. But I've seen others, and I'll just say it: USC, Lincoln Riley, they've had over 12, and I think they got more expected. Now they're flipping back and forth between players, but how many of y'all lose y'all mind if we're talking about 12, 13 dudes that's flipping back and forth? Y'all will go crazy.
Fire everybody.
Fire everybody. That'd be all the complaints. We can't keep anybody. Blah, blah, blah. And then they get somebody else. Oh, this staff is so great. They got somebody new. It's a roller coaster of emotions. This one, we get our class done by the summer. We don't touch it throughout the season. We maybe go for 1 or 2, but our focus is there. Now with the new landscape of college football, it's going to be different.
Yeah, it's going to be different. And that doesn't even mean to say that we might not see a decommitment or a flip over the next few days away from Oklahoma, because, again, their roster limitation stuff is going to create a very different environment over the next 30 days than what it's been like in previous years. Because Oklahoma, everybody else across the country is having to get down to that 105, where they were at a much different place for 2024. And with everybody expected to come back, that maybe Oklahoma wasn't initially planning on when they're doing their build outs for future years, it just creates a totally different dynamic. And that isn't to say that any of the kids that either decommit or are no longer takes aren't good players. There's just a number crunch that is going to affect everybody across the college football landscape. And it's just the nature of the beast this year.
It is.
What an interesting offseason we're already having. We're just a few days into it, and we're going to continue to discuss what's the staff going to look like. Because as we noted a little bit on yesterday's show, Brent Venables mentioned Ben Arbuckle working alongside everybody that's currently on the offensive staff. But are there going to be guys that do go somewhere else? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.